Welcome to another episode to the Layman's Guide to the World Cup, and today we're finally on the last group, the final group, and that is Group L, and this is our second group of death. And if you remember from the previous one when we did the other group of death, this is a group where it's going to be highly competitive. Teams will constantly, be fighting for positions, and you don't know really how it will finish. You can make predictions, but a lot of these teams in there can create upsets, make everything competitive. There can be a lot of draws, which then can really mess with the standings. So it'll be very competitive in this group, and that's because we have England, Croatia, Ghana, and Panama on this group, and just the top two, because of how seeding happens, it's the top 10 nations get seeded in pot 1, and that's good enough. But because we have 3 hosts, that caused Croatia, who is the 10th seed, to be knocked into pot 2, which caused this situation. You have 2 powerhouses being in the same group, like 2 teams that can easily make the semifinal in this group. So that situation happened because of the situation with having 3 hosts. So you can blame U.S., Mexico, or Canada. One of us will probably blame Canada for this one. But at the same time, for us, that for those that are just watchers and not supporters of these 4 teams, we just get to see a lot of good soccer, and that's what matters the most. So at this point, the World Cup's already started. Watched both games yesterday. Mexico game was quite eventful. 3 yellow cards and 3 red cards. Mexico won 2-0. And the atmosphere is great in the Azteca with the Mexican fans. And then later that night, we had Czechia and South Korea, which was a fun game as well. And I think it's really proved that South Korea will be fighting with Mexico for number 1 in their group. You can't count Korea out. They were quite dominant, but then Czechia, off of set pieces, were extremely dangerous. They have a player that can throw from the sideline on throw-in all the way to in front of goal. If you can imagine that. That's how they got one of their goals. And they almost had another 2 just like that. So that's a deadly weapon, having a set piece like that at any time. Not just corners or where the fouls happen, but you can take it off a throw-in, and you have players that are ready to receive that. Man, that's crazy. So that's exciting. There's the Canada-Bosnia game today. And, of course, what I'm most excited about is tonight we have the beautiful U.S. versus Paraguay at 8 o'clock Central Time. So if you're just watching this now, get ready for tonight. It's going to be awesome. Be taking place in L.A. So with that, let's get to it. First up, you got England, where the sport was invented. And that's always the question, is England is always considered greater than they are in soccer. They've had great teams. They've had amazing players. But for some reason, they can't get it together. They're one of those teams that the media, the English media, is always harsh and ever critical. Mexico fans know exactly how this is like. So that's what the Mexican team has to deal with that too. And they're just very hostile towards their own team and not ultra supportive. But they've had a lot of good success lately. With this team and the players that are here. They always have great talent. That's always undeniable with England. But I think they have a couple players that, at least through the spine of this team, that could take them far. Thomas Tuchel is their coach right now. He took over after the Euros, so they've had him for 2 years. And he's a guy, a no-nonsense type of guy. There's a lot of key players that you'd think that would be in this World Cup squad that he cut because their club form has not been great, like Phil Foden. So you're just like, what's up with that, Thomas? What's going on here? But he's kind of a no-nonsense type of guy. Last World Cup, they made it to the quarters. which you may think that's something impressive. But the last 2 Euros, which the Euros are always considered the second strongest tournament after the World Cup because they're like a mini World Cup, just with European teams. And the last 2, so in 24 and 2021, they got to the finals in both. They lost to Italy in 21, and they lost to Spain in 24. And they were both, it was a nail biter. They could have won. They really could have won. But sadly, that did not happen for them. So, can they finally bring it home? Because the funny thing is that the ladies are kind of in the same situation. They're having really talent. They won the last 2 Euros. Women's English team won last 2 Euros, but then they're not able to translate that level of success to a semifinal final at the World Cup. So we'll see. So it's kind of England is in this state, but they have, like I said, really good spine. Jordan Pickford, he's 32 and already has 84 appearances for this national team. And I think he's a very underrated goalkeeper. And I'm not saying he's like a top 5 in the world, but I think he's extremely underrated. Mostly because he plays for Everton, which is not like a top table, like a European fighting team in the English Premier League. But he's a guy that's always going to get shots taken at him. So he gets repetition on, doing those goalkeeper type things, blocking shots, catching balls, and just having to really organize a back line. So he has a lot of experience in that sense. And I think he's better than people think he is. Then you have Declan Rice in center mid position, who's been phenomenal for Arsenal this season. Arsenal won the Premier League for the first time in 20 years. And they also made it to the Champions League final, and Declan Rice in the midfield was a big part of that. So he's been a big part of the English team as well, so we'll see how that translates in this World Cup. And then their captain, Harry Kane, who is probably the best striker in the world right now. And when I use that term, like Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi aren't strikers. They're forwards, they're attacking players, you can put them in those type of categories, but they're not pure strikers. A pure striker's job is to score goals, be in front of frame, don't have... and that's kind of only their really responsibility, is being that center spot and striking the ball. Lionel Messi and Ronaldo both have different roles on top of that, so they're more of a forward. Forwards are more involved in the attack. But the other thing is, Kane also can do forward-like things, which that means create for other players, even though he's an out-and-out striker. To give you an example, another out-and-out striker is like Erling Haaland, or you have classics like Robert Lewandowski. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about like a pure striker. Their main job is just to score goals, and that's it. They're not responsible for anything else in the park. So, can Kane lift the big one? Can he lead this team? He's had a phenomenal season at Bayern Munich with, we've already mentioned, with Luis Diaz and Michael Olise. So, can he do it for England? That's going to be the question. So, I think anything but a quarterfinal is a failure. For English media, it's probably anything but a semifinals is a failure. But honestly, I think quarters, just with the level of talent. But this is the thing. I think England's one of those teams that can make it to the final. They're one of my favorites to make the final. I think the biggest thing against England right now is, if you watch videos, the English practicing and everything like that, this heat is taking its toll on them. The American heat is definitely not their friend. They've been practicing a lot in Florida, and they're complaining a lot about the temp. So I think that would be a major factor. Are these players going to run out of gas, and will that hinder how far they can go? Now, number 2 is Croatia. Croatia made it to the 2018 final, and they lost to France. But in this last World Cup, they made it to third place. So they lost to one of the eventual champions with France, and it's kind of a remake of the previous World Cup. And then they beat Morocco for the third place position. So they're a team that's extremely strong and ready to show up. They had a little bit of a dip. They got grouped in the Euros, so they're going to be coming back with a vengeance and being like, yes, we can do this. We're not that was just a fluke. But they got, this is Luka Modric, their engine in the midfield, their playmaker. This is his final World Cup. He's been, over the last decade, one of the best playmakers in the world, playing for, especially being at the heart of the Modric, Cruz, Casemiro midfield at Real Madrid that won all those Champions Leagues. So he is going to be the engine here, but he's 40 years old. Can his legs take it? Croatia, where they are in the Balkans, it's closer to the Mediterranean, so they're used to this weather a little more, just like when I talked about the Portuguese and the Spanish. So I think they'll be able to adapt a little more than the English, who are, like 80 degrees is extremely blistering hot to them, where these guys are used to the temp on the summer being closer to the coast in the Mediterranean. So then with Luka Modric, you'll have Mateo Kovac. He plays for Man City. He's played for Chelsea. Played for Real Madrid. He's a guy that's played a lot of big games in the center of the park, and he's very familiar with Modric. Has been playing with him on the national team for a long time, so they got a lot of chemistry. So it'll be good to see what they can do together and keep it up. He is now 32. I mean, he's not that old, but in soccer terms, that's when you're starting to exit your prime. So it'll be interesting. Can these guys hold up still? So this is kind of like the last round of this great generation of Croatian players. And then you have, back in the defense, you have Gvardiol, who plays for Man City with Kovac. And so he is a solid defender on the younger side. He had a really great last World Cup. So can he continue that form for club and country into this World Cup? This is a team where, same with England, quarters, anything less than quarters is a disappointment. And I think they can make it to the semis. I don't know about the final. That's kind of where I stop with them, just because of a lot of the age of their players. The difference with England is they have a lot of they have a good mix of ages, where Croatia, they're kind of a little dependent on this older generation that brought them to the World Cup final against France and made it to the third place in the previous World Cup. So they're really dependent on this group, but it's like these guys are old now. So will their legs last? Now they do have some young talent, especially in defense, so that'll make up for it. But I mean, on top of Kovacic and Modric, they have like Perisic. He's 37, so I mean, and he's like one of their guys that makes things happen in the attack as a winger. So it's just really like, what's going to happen here with this team? I don't know, but I don't think we should count them out. Because the talent's there. It's really the legs is the question with this team. And then you have Ghana, a team that does have legs for days. Ghana usually, for most World Cups, their players are up there in the top 10 fastest players in the whole World Cup for like just pure sprint speed and all of that. So, and the farthest they've ever made it was the quarters in 2010. But the last World Cup, along with the last AFCON, they've been grouped. So, can they get back into form? No matter what, I think Ghana is a threat, especially with their attacking options. You have both Antonio Simonet, who's had this awesome first part of the season with Bournemouth, and then you got the transfer to Man City, and he's been the one that helped. He's one of the players that really helped Man City stay in the title race till the last 2 weeks of the season. Then you also have Inaki Williams, plays for Athletic Bilbao, who's also a great forward as well. So you got these great attacking options. Within the center mid, you have Thomas Petry, who's very much a controversial character for off the field situations. But if he can put that all behind, can he have a solid run for his country in the center of the park? As he's a Villarreal man. He was playing for Arsenal, but because of some domestic assault and sexual assault, what's the word I'm looking for? He was accused of both, and that proceeding has still happened. But, we don't know for sure what really happened. Like I said, it's still going on in the courts. So he got out of England and went to go play in the Spanish league, because there's no way he would have been able to play in the Premier League this last season. So, like I said, controversial figure, but he will be playing for his country here. But likely finish, I think they're going to give Croatia and they're going to give England a fight for those places. What's going to help them a lot is the weather. They can take advantage of this weather, being an African nation compared, especially a coastal African nation. So humidity and heat, what's that? They're used to it. So that could help them, push these two teams. That's why this, I think, is the group of death with these other two teams. They can't count out Ghana and Panama. I wanted to say them together as one word, because these guys and both of these teams are used to this weather, and that can be an X factor for them. On top of already being a good, solid team, that can take them far. So I think at the very least, Ghana is going to have third place, but I think they could push. I wouldn't be surprised if they make it to second place, but if England can get past the heat and Croatia, it's full steam ahead, then more than likely I think third place. And then the round of 32, they'll be in the round of 32. But I can see a round of 16, but I don't know past that. I don't think they have the depth of talent to make it past the round of 16 into the quarters. Like I said, the weather can be an X factor, so depending on who they're lined up against in those rounds could potentially cause some interesting things to happen. But no matter what, they're going to cause trouble for the other teams in this group. Then we have Panama, a team I'm very familiar with. Panama plays here in CONCACAF, and they've, over, I'd say, this last 6 years, have really become the fourth team in CONCACAF. Thomas Christiansen is an amazing coach from Iceland who has really shaped this team. And I think it speaks volumes that for most of their players, they went from a national team where most of their players just play in Panama to now their players are playing in Mexico and Ecuador, a bunch of other South American countries. They're playing in Turkey. They're starting to play in a bunch of the lower leagues in Europe and making their way into top 5 leagues like in Spain. So they're a team on the rise where people are starting to take notice of, Panama is not just some random team. They're actually a team that's producing talent that can play. So don't take them for granted, because last time the best they've done in the World Cup was their only other appearance in the World Cup, and they got grouped in 2018. But this time they're ready, because they're constantly in the top group in CONCACAF with the Gold Cup. And at the recent Copa, they made it to the quarters. So they're a team not to be taken lightly. For those in Houston, you're very familiar with probably one of their best players, and that's Carrasquilla. Plays for Tigres. Before he played for Tigres, he played for the Dynamo for a good number of years and was our playmaker in the middle of the park. So us in Houston are very familiar with that man. And then there's Morella, who is currently playing for Besiktas in the Turkish league, but he's also played for Marseille in France. So he's this guy that has a lot of European experience. He's one of their right backs. But like I said, this talent, their talent's not just playing in Panama anymore. They're playing in MLS. They're playing in Ecuador. They're playing in Liga MX. So they're able to take themselves to the next level. And like I said, with this weather is going to be a big factor for them. And the other X factor is going to be Christensen's tactics, because I think that's what this team does well. They don't need the star player, but Christensen is able to use the tactics, which are very reminiscent of a lot of Asian teams and kind of how they work in a system. And because they're working in a system together, they're able to be more than just the sum of their parts. So it's exciting. I think they're going to be pushing Ghana for that third place spot. So I can see them round of 32. I think for them is a massive success, and I think they can do it. It's just really going to be that combat between them and Ghana. Could they maybe take a draw off of Croatia or England? Who knows? I think they're capable in this with just the tactics and the X factor with the weather. I think they can do a little more than we think. So don't count Panama out. So on paper they may be the weakest team, but I think if we count them out, you'd be surprised at what damage they can do to these other teams. So either way, all these matches are going to be great. They're going to be competitive, and I'm excited to watch them and see what happens. So this is our second group of death. I mean, you can argue. I can see the argument for both of them. They're both strong groups. So we'll see. Either way, this group's going to have a lot of drama, a lot of storylines going on. So with that, I hope you're enjoying the World Cup. You watched the U.S. tonight. Going forward, I'm going to do an episode every Tuesday, kind of recapping the week of games and kind of telling you what game is coming up you should keep your eyes on, because they'll be exciting, or maybe there's a storyline happening. There's teams that are playing better than we thought. All of that. So keep in touch. We'll do a recap every Tuesday throughout this whole World Cup, and I hope you're participating in more than just the U.S. games. Okay, watch other games too. There's some exciting teams in this World Cup and some really good soccer. If you want to know what good soccer is, there's a lot of opportunity to watch it. Okay, like I had a lot of fun watching the Korea Czechia game last night. There's some good soccer out there. It's like when soccer is good, it's like a chess match where it's a duel. You know, you take their piece, you take that piece, dune, or kind of like a war game of trying to find that spot where we can go through. And if you watch some of the highlights from the Korean game, you can see it a lot with their players and how they got both their goals, their players finding the spots to get through and then lighting up a goal. So I hope you enjoy soccer. It's a beautiful time to watch. And I'll see you next time. I'll see you on Tuesday.